The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous supporters. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/donate. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode 132.
One day, I shall come back.
That's it. I've been renewed.
Is when a Time Lord's body wears out, he regenerates.
I'm a Time Lord. I'm not a human being. I walk in eternity.
Braveheart team.
Change, my dear, and it seems not a moment too soon.
Unlimited rice pudding.
Physician, person.
Wearing a bit thin.
Fantastic.
I am Scottish. I can complain about things.
She'll be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the third Doctor story. And I got it right this time. Woohoo! Unfortunately, I told folks that it was the fourth Doctor story, but it's a third Doctor story.
Yeah, you just become unstuck in time.
Exactly. It's called Inferno. And joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going?
Very well. Couple bits of business just before we get started. Very quick. As I often ask you, please, write an iTunes review for us if you can, and share the podcast with your friends. That helps us grow the audience, and we're always looking to grow this audience, especially as we're getting closer and closer to another season of new Doctor Who. So there'll be more opportunity to talk about these new shows, and more people will be interested. So we need to have a big audience going into that. One of the things about iTunes is that they're adding some things. They're changing it. They're going to call it the podcast, not iTunes anymore. But it's also they're adding things like auto transcripts and new categories. And just as an opportunity, they're shaking things up. So maybe that's our opportunity to kind of jump up into people's view. So if you write us a review, that helps with that, certainly. The other thing I want to mention is, and I mentioned this last time, I want to mention again, a little self-promotion here of the new podcast, Raising the Bets. It's a podcast I do with my wife, Melanie, where we talk about being a Catholic couple, raising a family outside of Boston here with our 5 kids. And so far, I don't know about you, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. My wife is too. We have our 3rd episode is out, and we got a new episode about every week, and we're doing lots of fun things and some interesting discussions. And I really want you to get to know Melanie, because she's a very interesting person who has interesting things to say. That's one of the reasons I married her. Plus, she's so good looking. And so I would encourage you to go to sqpn.com/bets. That's 2 T's, BETTS, and check it out. And I would greatly appreciate that. And if you give me some feedback on it, what do you think of it? All right. All the preliminaries done. Let's talk about Inferno. It's this about a big, tall building that catches fire and people are inside?
It's about a big, tall world that catches fire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It just occurred to me that, in the 1970s, we had The Towering Inferno, a classic movie.
I think it was a little after that, this.
It is.
Yeah.
This came out in June 1970, 7 episodes, with John Pertwee as the third Doctor. This is the last story, the last serial of his first season. This is the 7th season overall. It's also the last one to feature as his companion Liz Shaw. And after this, they're going to shake things up a little bit. There's almost the season 8 will be almost like a reboot of the third Doctor. I've heard it said. So
I've been looking forward to this one. I think Father Corey has too. This is one of my favorites from this period in the show.
Same here. This is my first note I wrote down was one of my personal favorites from Pertwee. I've always enjoyed this one.
Yeah. There's a lot to like, and let's get into what there is to like. First, the premise. Its unit is providing security at an experimental drilling project that's designed to penetrate the Earth's crust and release a previously unknown source of energy, this gas, Stallman's gas.
Yeah. And as we know from The Underwater Menace, penetrating the Earth's crust is a bad idea.
Yes, it remains a bad idea.
Only for slightly different reasons this time. Instead of, I guess they're drilling on land, so they're not going to drain all the world's oceans into the Earth's crust, causing a steam explosion. They're actually releasing lava and primordial ooze that turns people into werewolves.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that they keep going back to the idea of going deep under the earth. We had this in the Silurian Menace. We had this in the Underwater Menace, or not the Silurian Menace, but it's the Silurians, the Underwater Menace, and now again in Inferno.
Well, and it's interesting, too, that this is actually based off of something that was fairly contemporary.
Yes.
The U.S. government was trying to do just this. They were trying to dig down into underneath the crust of the earth, Project Mohole. And at the time,
I love that name.
Yeah, I know. And at the time it was classified. So according to TARDIS Wikia, they tried to get a hold of the information on it. And of course, the U.S. government's going, yeah, no, we ain't telling you anything about that.
Even
this
though we're
ain't
not
happening.
doing it anymore.
How do you
we're
even
not
know
you.
about this? Type of deal.
I love the name Mohole. If we've got a hole, but this is Mohole than that.
Yep.
I think the name was derived from mole hole, like the burrowing animals, moles.
Yep.
Yes, that's a good point. Yes, that's probably what it was.
And actually, that was like one of the original titles for the script. The script was originally like either a 3 or a 4-parter that was just devoted to this drilling project. And I think that would have been a much more boringer series than this turned out to be, because what they did was they decided for financial or whatever reasons they needed to extend it to 7, so they needed a B story to tack onto it. And the B story turned out to be far more interesting and really elevate the whole serial, because what happens is before the near disaster happens on our Earth, which of course has to be stopped for dramatic reasons. You can't blow up the Earth that we've been following all these years.
It'll be the end of the series.
Yeah. They for the first time in Doctor Who history show us a parallel world, and the Doctor gets to see the disaster actually play out there and then come back to the regular Earth and use that knowledge to stop it.
Right. And this parallel Earth which is a sort of a mirror universe where the good people are evil, which is something that we saw in Star Trek in before this.
Yeah. This is obviously the Doctor Who's Mirror episode. One thing that would be kind of interesting, though, I kind of wish they would have gone back somehow. I mean, obviously Earth is gone, but the rest of the universe is there, and it would have been interesting to see what happened.
If the Daleks were good. And
I did some checking, and it turns out they have done more with what's sometimes called the Inferno Earth, but it's like all been in prose. It's barely been mentioned in any audio stories. So Big Finish hasn't like set a story in that universe yet, but it would be interesting if they did. I was wishing the same thing.
And they could travel to before 1970 and to where the world still exists.
Yeah. Well, and basically said, the Doctor says, I don't exist in this universe. I don't exist in this world. So, at a minimum, either the Doctor never left Gallifrey, never visited Earth, that Doctor, the Doctor of that universe, that could have been interesting stories too.
Right. Or if he runs into a previous incarnation or a different regeneration. Yeah. I mean, that would be a very interesting story. They should get on that. Maybe the 13th Doctor should travel and run into the 12th Doctor and bring Peter Capaldi back for that. That would be what would that be? A good Peter Capaldi or an evil? Never mind.
Yeah.
So another interesting little bit of behind the scenes is the character of Petra, who is the assistant to the doctor in charge of this drilling project, was supposed to be originally played by Kate O'Mara, who later on will play the Ronnie.
Yeah.
So that would have been an interesting casting choice because Kate O'Mara is such an interesting actress in the role of the Ronnie. So,
and she certainly has background as a scientist working on evil plans.
Exactly. So one other bit of behind the scenes, I want to mention it now so I don't forget it later because it's a funny thing. So what we have this mirror universe where there's the evil counterparts to all the good people, and apparently in the unlike Star Trek where the evil people have mustaches and beards, in this the parallel universe, the Inferno Earth, they have a lack of facial hair makes them evil, which I think is actually makes more sense. And
they have something over in their eyes, whether it is an eye patch or sunglasses.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting, some of the cosmetic differences. So the Brigadier has an eye patch but no mustache. He's also got scarring. He's got a scar over his eye, and he's actually got a little scar under his nose, which may be why Nicholas Courtney, the actor, grew the mustache in the first place.
Right.
Professor Stallman has no goatee.
He looks like a Bond villain.
He does,
Yeah.
but he's got these little narrow sunglasses that make his eyes look squinty and evil. And all of the
Liz
scientists,
has dark hair.
Oh, I was going to mention Liz is a brunette.
shorter dark hair. Yeah.
And the scientists, instead of wearing rather contemporary clothes, like Petra is wearing a mini dress in the good universe, all of the scientists are wearing these like quasi-military uniforms, except they're white.
Yeah,
And-
almost like narrow jackets or something like that whole weird 60s thing. Yeah.
Well, and of course the facility isn't a research project. It's basically a labor camp for scientists.
Yeah,
The scientists
right.
are locked in a labor camp, and that's why they've got more of the military uniform type outfit.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
they call it. The doctor calls it or the brigade leader.
Yes.
Calls it a scientific labor camp, and it's being run by the Republican security forces because Britain in this universe is a fascist state. The royal family has all been shot, and the Defense of the Republic Act of 1943 gives what would be UNIT, the Republican security forces, control over a bunch of this stuff, including the slave labor they're using at this scientific labor camp.
And so there's a scene in which the evil Lethbridge Stewart he spins around in his chair to have this reveal of him without a mustache and with an eye patch. And when he did it during filming, apparently everyone on the set was wearing an eye patch at the same time. So and so he was, and they kept that in because he didn't crack a smile, didn't miss a beat. He kept going, which was awesome. Apparently, Moffat wrote into the Wedding of River song scenes in which everyone was wearing an eye patch as a tribute to Nicholas Courtney, who had died that year. So when you watch that again, the Wedding of River song, remember that everyone has an eye patch in that episode because of that.
And they have to, because that's what lets them remember the silence.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. And then let's see. The last bit is it's a small little bit, but this is the last story to feature the original TARDIS console from 1963, which will then be scrapped and rebuilt for season 8. But it seems like a lot of the things the BBC did at the time, not knowing that this show would have such a legacy. If only they had saved it and put it aside to be a fan thing, you know.
Well, but they did rebuild it eventually for the Adventure in Space and Time.
Yes, they did.
Series or show. So that at least we have a recreation of it today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
A couple more little behind the scenes things. I found it interesting. The Republican security forces. By the way, they have a symbol that's kind of it's kind of their equivalent of a swastika. It's like one big arrow going up and two smaller arrows going out to the sides. So it's kind of sort of triangular diamond shape, but there's no bottom arrow. There's no arrow going down. And that suggests to me that the Republic's ideology is up and out. So I assume they're an expansionist state. They're like establishing a new British Republican empire or something.
Yeah.
Also, they literally wear black hats in the Republican security forces. They've got these little peaked military caps that are black and have their symbol on them. And
literally wear brown shirts.
Literally wear brown shirts. And also, there's a scene in one of the Parallel Universe episodes where the Doctor and a Primord are like up on top of this tower. It's like a water tower or something. And somebody on the ground shoots the Primord, and we see him from the ground perspective fall off. And just this huge, enormous, impressive fall. That was the biggest fall for a TV show that had been filmed at the time. So it was kind of a new, stunt level thing they were doing.
Wow.
And also the actor who shoots the Primord is also the actor playing the Primord. So he's shooting himself.
Yes. I read something about how the guy was a day actor, and they got called back, and there was a confusion in the continuity about who's who and who was supposed to be on the tower and who was on the ground. And so they ended up having him shoot himself. That's
funny.
Yeah, that was pretty
also,
funny.
I found myself wondering, why can't we ever go to a parallel universe that's nice for once? You know, like where people are nicer.
Because it wouldn't be an interesting story.
Well, I think there could be ways to make it interesting, but
a parallel universe where we're the evil universe.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be interesting. So let's talk about the story itself. So it's at this facility that's a sort of remote facility. It looks very industrial. They found some sort of industrial park to film this in. There's a nuclear reactor on site, which looks like a couple of oil tanks that they climb around on, but it's a nuclear reactor.
Those
and
are
then this
cooling towers.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Was there were cooling towers for the nuclear pile, and they're drilling in this high-tech drilling space. And then we have UNIT, like I said, is providing security. And then there's this doctor, Dr. Stallman.
Oh.
He's the head of science. Yes.
Yeah.
He's very much a jerk.
He's a stereotypical arrogant professor. I mean, just he always thinks he's right. No one else knows anything.
This leads to one of my criticisms of not just this series, which I actually enjoy, but a lot of early series, not just on Doctor Who. There's a certain kind of paint by numbers writing that you get in this, where they're hyping the drama in such predictable ways. If people are in danger and they're trying to fix something, you get lots of "do this now, I'm going as fast as I can and you're not helping," and it's just really predictable paint by numbers dialogue. And we have some of that in here, but also before the disaster happens, you have people who are just monomaniacally fixed on something of "you must do this" or "you must not do this," and they can't argue their positions. And a giveaway phrase, which we do hear in this one several times, is "do as I say." Anytime you hear someone saying "do as I say" in the context of a heated argument, it means I, the writer, do not have a logical comeback for that. And so the writers have not thought it through enough to have actual arguments that the characters can use. And so you get a lot of repetitious shouting with people being monomaniacally fixed and not thinking through a situation together.
Yeah, Stallman does this throughout. In fact, Stallman is the one character I would say who's evil on both sides.
He doesn't change much.
I mean,
he's very one note. I mean, literally, it's do things my way. We've got to speed things up. We've got to get this. And of course, the reason why they got to speed up is because of the green goo we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But it's just keep go. Don't argue with me. Just do what I tell you. And that's literally his entire
overbearing. Note. Yeah. Overbearing, arrogant, impatient, and always wants to ignore safety precautions or anything else and anybody else's input. So like, why is anybody else there even? You know, it's just it is kind of tedious after a while.
But that does play into the mirror universe though, where they're basically the technicians are there basically as slaves.
Right. So it's like Stallman's more at home in the mirror universe.
Yeah.
So we start with this premise, which is maintenance gets called to fix an output pipe on a drilling rig, and the technician touches this green goo that's coming out and is affected. And he goes crazy, attacks someone, and kills them, and runs off. And that's sort of how we start things off here.
He becomes a zombie, but he's not yet a werewolf.
Yep.
Right. And UNIT, in the form of the Brigadier and Sergeant Benton and the others, we start off with them are looking for this guy. He's committed a murder, and now he's running around, and they
also
can't find him.
The wrench used to kill the guy is preternaturally hot.
Yes. That is an important point. As in everything around him is hot, and they seek heat.
Although the rubber handle on it somehow survived not melting off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So the doctor arrives, and there's this interesting sort of out of left field dispute between the doctor and the Brigadier over whether the doctor works for UNIT or not. Does he take orders from the Brigadier? Or is he there of his own free will to help and can leave whenever he likes? There's a little bit of a conflict.
Guess which side of that argument the doctor takes.
Well, yes, of course.
Oh, no, I totally work for you. I'm under your orders. I can't leave of my own free will.
Yeah, no.
Right. Yeah, it's sort of comes out of left field. It's sort of it's a strange little argument there, but
it's a setup for the fact that it's to remind the audience the Doctor is continually tinkering with the TARDIS so he can get out of here.
Yeah.
He doesn't like being trapped on Earth.
Right. And in fact, that's what the Doctor is doing in this location. I think he's there because not for having to do with the drilling, but because it gives him access to a nuclear reactor that lets him do what we'll talk about in a second with his TARDIS console. We have this oil drilling expert who shows up, and Sir Keith, who's the nominal head of this project over Dr. Stallman, but has no ability to control Stallman. He explains to this guy that they're using a robot drill with built-in power source fed by their own nuclear reactor 20 miles down. So this is advanced technology.
It's built-in power source that gets outside power.
Well,
Exactly.
they explain the reason for that as because if you had a 20-mile long drill, it would be subject to incredible tensions and would snap.
Yeah.
And so this is their solution. Right. It's not a 20-mile long drill. It's a 20-mile long cable connected to an independent drill, which actually is kind of smart.
Yeah, in fact, this is a real-world problem. Is drills even today still require miles and miles of pipe.
Exactly.
That's what is a limit to how deep anyone can drill.
Also, notice how 1970s this is with Stallman's gas, a powerful new energy source. It's like, okay, energy crisis, that is so 1970s.
Exactly.
Yes. And then it's more powerful than conventional gas. And then Stallman has this assistant named Petra. Now, this driller from Kuwait, this oil drilling expert named Sutton, let me tell you, I'm not sensitive to politically correct stuff, but man, was it stark contrast to the way things are today, the way he treated Petra right off the bat. Yeah. I mean, he barely was in the room 30 seconds and he's hitting on her, trying to date her or whatever.
But she's hitting right back. I mean, she's defending herself against this very effectively. She just shuts him down. And even though she's wearing a maid dress. And she really stands up for herself. And what I liked is even though he is hitting on her, they just had her stand up for herself without pointing to feminism in any way. She doesn't say, well, you're a male chauvinist pig and I'm a feminist. And we don't have any of that. She just stands up for herself like a human being. Yeah. And I liked that.
Yes. And we have to admit that in the end, they do write it so that despite him being a boorish jerk about in this way, they end up together, which is like, whatever. Okay. I mean, it is 1970s.
Well, they end up driving in the same car together back to London. That's as much as we know.
It's implied.
It's implied. They're sweet on each other.
So I like the fact that the Doctor says he's not wild about computers.
Yeah.
That he doesn't.
Yeah, I know. Where does that come from?
Well, I mean, when you think about it, what were computers at the time? They were very primitive devices. This computer
they
that
were
they
literally
had there,
data collection and computation. That's all computers really did at that point.
Right. They weren't interactive. And
yeah, I know, but that's Earth computers. He's from Gallifrey. His TARDIS has to be just saturated with the things.
Exactly. So the meanwhile, the Slocum is turning into some kind of hairy green wolfman creature, and his meddling sends too much power to the TARDIS as the Doctor activates it. So let me step aside for a second. So the TARDIS console is being established as this is what travels through time and space, apart from the TARDIS itself, right?
In essence, yeah, at least it can. If it has a power supply, it doesn't have its own power supply, but if it has a power supply, which ordinarily is the Eye of Harmony, it can travel. And here it's hooked up to a nuclear power plant. Why the Doctor has taken the console out of the TARDIS shell, I don't know. But he's got it in this shed along with Bessie. And he's working on it, and we actually see this happen later, much farther down the line in the Matt Smith episode, The Doctor's Wife,
right.
When the TARDIS's consciousness is inhabiting a woman's body. The Doctor and the TARDIS have to build a new TARDIS out of scrap from like a TARDIS junkyard. And they basically get a console and put it on a platform and are able to travel with it.
Yeah.
And we saw the TARDIS console separate from the TARDIS itself in the previous story, the Ambassadors of Death, right? That was the first time we saw that separated. I think that was the first time. So yeah, they've sort of, because the Doctor is stranded on Earth, I think they're kind of just playing with the idea of the console itself as opposed to the TARDIS and the TARDIS set, and dragging the blue box around. But we never see the blue box.
Well, it's interesting too, though, because there is episodes where they talk about the TARDIS's engines.
Yeah.
And there was a Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, another Matt Smith episode, where they actually go into the engine room and the engine is in the process of being destroyed. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably do some, headcanon of the console has the ability to do the travel, but the engines boost its ability to travel, or who knows.
Right. You have to do headcanon it. So what happens though is, because Slocum is the maintenance guy turning into a monster, he gets into the nuclear switching room, because you just walk through the door into the nuclear switching room, and causes an overload of power to the console just as the Doctor's activating it, and he gets stuck in some kind of limbo for a few minutes and then comes back. So this weird non-space thing that happens to him. So then when he comes back, there's an emergency at the drill head itself from that same excess power issue, and they end up cornering Slocum at the reactor. Slocum is killed, and then they find out he's radiating massive heat, and that 2 others have been infected as well. And one thing I want to point out is there's a scene where the Doctor and the Brigadier are on top of the cooling tower, so-called, and apparently John Pertwee was terrified of heights. So if you watch this scene, the scenes where he's up high, you can tell how brave he's being, trying to act out, but he's got a death grip on the railings as he's up there. I mean, I got to give him credit for going through with it. But he sucked it up and made the scene and went on.
And there are a lot of scenes of climbing ladders and going across catwalks, and there's a lot of those.
I don't ordinarily have fear of heights, but the first time I went to the Grand Canyon and went out on this lookout point they have there on the southern slope, it was like so vast and so deep. I did totally grab on to the handle for dear life. I did the railing.
I did the same thing. I don't have a fear of heights. I love flying. I fly in small planes. But I went to Paris in 1997 for World Youth Day, and my brother and I went to the top of the Eiffel Tower. We walked out onto the platform. Some guy stuck his arm through the railing with his video camera, pointing down, and I pictured what would happen if he let go of the camera and how it would explode at the bottom. And suddenly that was it. I'm done. I stepped back, leaned against the wall until my brother was ready to go. And that was that.
If you want even more fun, you could go to Chicago, go to the formerly Sears Tower, now Wills Tower.
Yes.
And they have in their observatory deck places where you can literally step out onto this glass, and it's just a glass box on the outside of the building.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so you look down and all you see is street.
No.
Way down there.
Did you hear what happened this weekend?
Yeah.
Somebody
some of that
out.
cracked.
It cracked under their feet.
That happens every once in a while.
Yeah. I'm not doing that.
It's kind of cool, actually. But
well, the cracking. I'm not a small man. I'm just not going to tempt fate.
Yep.
So 2 guys were infected by Slocum before he died. Wyatt and Bromley. One's a scientist or technician, and one's the soldier, the soldier who ends up shooting himself later. So we have Sir Keith, who reveals the green goo that infected Slocum, and the Doctor, for some reason, thinks it's related to Krakatoa, and reveals that it screams.
Right. So the Primoids make this noise, and somebody asked the Doctor, "Have you ever heard anything like that before?" And he says, "Yes, I have at Krakatoa." So,
and what is Krakatoa?
Oh, Krakatoa was a volcano that blew up in the 1800s and caused a temporary global nuclear winter.
Right. It was like winter in the middle of summer, where it was snowed in places and that sort of thing.
And it inspired the novel Frankenstein, among other things, because Mary Shelley and her husband and friends didn't have anything to do because it was the year with no summer, and so they were all holed up, and to pass the time, they told each other stories, and she came up with Frankenstein.
Oh, wow.
That is fun. So,
by the way, we should mention, you guys have both mentioned the word primoid, and that word doesn't show up anywhere in the episode,
Only in the
but
credits.
it is
yeah.
in the script.
Yeah.
It is the name of the creatures that's written in the script, but no one ever actually says the word Primoid.
That's true. That's true. And in fact, it's apparently a creature that its a natural form is this green goo, but it can take control of people and shapeshift them, change them into creatures, wolfman creatures in the case of humans that it controls. So interesting little alien creature. But you're right. Nowhere does it actually give them that name.
But by the way, I need to correct myself. Krakatoa was 1800s, but it was the famous explosion was 1883. The earlier year without a summer in 1816 was caused by Mount Tambor, but both of them were Indonesian volcanoes that blew.
Okay. Interesting. Twice in the 19th century. So the doctor's had enough of Stallman, and he has this great interchange. He says, "Well, I'll tell you something that should be of vital interest to you, Professor." And Stallman says, "Well, what?" The doctor says, "That you, sir, are a nitwit." And walks out. I love
The doctor
that
and Stallman of this are just great because they're at each other so much. It's awesome.
It is great. So Stallman cuts the power to the doctor's experiment, but Stallman has also discovered that he's turning green, although slower than everybody else is turning green for some,
of course,
infected by a Primord. We have to up the drama.
But then it's like a rubber band. He's slowly progressing, and then snap, he's a wolfman almost instantly.
Right. And then Stallman is trying to sabotage the computer because the computer is saying, "Hey, what we're doing, what Stallman's doing, is dangerous. We should stop." And Stallman doesn't want to listen to the computer, and so the doctor catches him sabotaging it, and then Stallman attacks the doctor, who then uses, for the first time ever, Venusian Aikido. Paralyzes him.
He uses it a few times, and during at one particularly notable moment when he's in the parallel universe, which he's about to get to, he does what I can only refer to as the Venusian Three Stooges chest poke. He just makes a V for victory sign and just pokes a guy in the chest with it, like the Three Stooges would do to their eyes, and the guy just collapses.
It's the most effective of all martial arts, apparently, those Venusians. So the doctor, without even telling Liz, who's been assisting him, he sneakily turns the power back on, the nuclear power, to his to the TARDIS console, and to make another trial run. But Stallman discovers it and switches it off again, just as the doctor is dematerializing, along with Bessie for some reason.
Yeah.
This time Bessie goes along. Bessie's the car. The doctor's old-fashioned car.
I could only think of, because there are other things in the shed that are closer than Bessie. I can only headcanon that by Bessie must have some kind of Time Lord technology that the TARDIS console is programmed to bring with.
Yes. By the way, I am very much amused that everyone is astounded at the doctor's invention of the garage door opener.
I know, right? Apparently, it wasn't a thing in 1970, at least not in Britain.
Yes.
Boy, does Liz have so much fun playing with the garage door opener. I mean, she's just all over that thing.
It looks like a sonic screwdriver, and they hold it up, and the door's open, and then she hold it, and the door's closed again. I'm like, or you could just open the door.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like a very hard door to open. So it was very amusing. And then Liz is all upset because the doctor's missing, and she goes to the brigadier. "Why aren't you worried about this?" And the brigadier says, "Professor Stallman seems determined to blow us all to kingdom come. The doctor has vanished into thin air, and I have a number of unsolved mysteries on my hands. I promise you, Miss Shaw, I am worried." And he does this all. My reading of that was much more agitated. He does it so evenly. It's so very British Reserve as he does it.
Well, very
worried.
stoic, very not just British Reserve, but very military discipline. You know, regardless of what you do not overreact. You
do not lose control. Yes.
Yeah.
I liked how, so Liz goes to Stallman and is like, "We must have a nuclear power source reconnected at once to try to get the doctor back." And I'm going, yeah, pro-nuclear power.
Exactly. So the doctor wakes up in a parallel world. We know it's a parallel world because the shed that was his workshop is now neat. And there's a Big Brother poster on the wall, a where apparently the dear leader of
who was actually like the Doctor Who visual effects director.
Yes,
is that who it was? That's funny.
In honor,
who worked on
in honor of the fact that when the BBC Television had done an adaptation of 1984, they used like the head of programming or something for Big Brother.
Yes, yep, that was a lot of fun.
And the slogan "Unity is strength."
Right.
These parallel world episodes, like Mirror Mirror and Star Trek. This one, they make a lot of sense, especially for a budget purpose, because you basically use the same sets, maybe you redecorate them a little bit, you move things around, but you're using the same sets, the same actors, the same locations, so you can film everything all at once. You just got to change a few things and keep going. Well,
and the actors love it. I mean, both the actress who plays Liz and and Nicholas Courtney both said they had so much fun being evil versions of their characters that filming the good versions was boring after that. So,
interestingly, even though Carolyn Johns liked playing evil Liz, there is a moment right at the end of episode 6 where she shoots the brigade leader, Lethbridge Stewart. And she was pregnant at the time. Can't be very far along. I would guess, maybe 3 or 4 months. Right. But I guess her hormones were, active at that time, and she just really had problems shooting the Brigadier. And so their solution was they didn't show it to us. They show the Brigadier in frame being shot, but we don't see who shoots him. And then when they change the angle, we see Liz putting a gun back in its holster. Right. But she couldn't on camera shoot him because
actually pull the trigger of this cap gun, basically.
Yeah.
I see that. So the Doctor at this point is he runs out and runs into what he thinks are unit soldiers in strange uniforms and with strange shoes. I like the fact that they even changed the guns to be much more, instead of the guns that unit usually has, which were pretty typical lower end sort of typical infantry guns of the time, to higher end, more martial assault type. I'm sorry, I used not assault type, but more higher end weapons of the era.
Well, they looked more like M1s. I mean, I didn't get a really good close look at them, but they looked more like the World War II era M1s than they did kind of the pistols and things like that.
There was some attention to detail there.
They also have a shoot first policy, because as soon as the Doctor starts driving Bessie around the compound, not realizing where he is, they start shooting. They don't even give him a halt. Who are you?
Yeah.
Yes. Luckily, they are worse than Imperial stormtroopers with their accuracy in shooting. So, and apparently, both Bromley and Wyatt were infected by the Primords here as well. So they're running around. Then the Doctor, after a lot of chasing, including hiding in a garbage can, which was such a classic trope, evil Liz Shaw captures the Doctor and takes him to the evil brig. Here, Liz is not a scientist, but is a soldier of sorts.
Security officer. She says she's the section leader.
And he's not the brigadier; he's the brigade leader. And I forget what, instead of sergeant, it's like it's long like under something.
Untergruppenführer or something or other like that for Benton.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah. There was a sort of Germanish construction to some of these titles, which but in English, which was fun. I come from a parallel universe, the Doctor says, and obviously he's trying to confuse us, brigade leader, says Liz. That's a pretty dumb way to try to confuse them. Like if someone comes up to you and says, I come from a parallel universe, I know I'm not, no one's buying it. So why would I even try? It just seems like it would make me question things.
Trying to play is insane.
Yeah, they say that at one point. But the Doctor fixes their computer in an emergency situation, and that gives them some cred, although they think it causes them to question, is he a spy? Because at first, when he knows the computer is malfunctioning, they assume he's the saboteur that broke it. Mm-hmm. And then he fixes it, and we have lots of back and forth about, of course, I'm not a spy, I just saved us all by fixing this thing. And eventually, they imprison him, of course, and right next to a sleeping werewolf under a blanket. And then Liz is interrogating him. Oh, he also gets the 3rd degree. And apparently shining a bright light in the face of a Time Lord makes him totally weak and helpless.
Yeah, exactly.
But then they put him in a cell next to a werewolf, and Liz is, although they don't know that yet, and Liz is interrogating him some further, and she concludes that he's too conspicuous to be a spy, which, like, yeah.
You think?
He doesn't look like
he's driving around in a
here.
He's driving around in a bright yellow car wearing, Victorian style clothing and a cape. You think maybe, I got a kick out of the interrogation scene because that's so stereotypical 1970s police drama.
Yeah. But she concludes, even though he's too conspicuous to be a spy, she thinks he may just be a crackpot for one of those free speech groups.
Yeah.
And if he'll just fess up to that, then she can help him. It'll only be a few years in a labor camp that way.
One of the things that convinced him that he's not a spy was also that they checked their records and he's not on their list of spies. And I'm thinking, that seems really handy to have a list of foreign agents. Yeah, that would make counterintelligence really useful.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
really nice to have a list of all the foreign agents there are in your country. Yeah.
Well, this is kind of like the central database of like everybody who has ever existed. I love the line though, as the doctor is trying to convince him that he's not a spy and that they won't find him in that database. He goes, "Well, I don't exist in your world, brigade leader. Then you won't feel the bullets when we shoot you."
Yeah.
So one of the things that is true in the parallel world is that the drilling is much more advanced. Presumably because
in terms of the timetable.
In terms of the timetable, right. But presumably because there is no one on that side who has the ability to stand up and say, "Slow down," to Stallman. Yep. We're going too fast. I think it's a nice subtle way of showing how a fascist state sort of thing can go at a breakneck speed into danger.
And destroy the world sooner.
And destroy the world faster. I thought that was a nice, somewhat subtle bit of writing there. So, and then back in the prime reality, though, Stallman is still convinced that we need to go at a breakneck pace. So we talked about the Wolfman in the cell next to the doctor, and so he eventually wakes up and comes after the doctor and bends the bars to get at the doctor, who sneaks out of the cell, out of the door of the cell, and then closes it. Apparently the bars between cells are really soft, but the bars to get out of the cell must be really hard. Like, someone didn't think that through very much on that one.
I like the way that you just were able to headcanon that, because to me this is like one of those moments. I don't know if you ever see those Screen Rant pitch meetings with Ryan, whatever his name is. He plays both parts. He plays both a hopeful writer of movie scripts and a movie executive. So he's talking to himself, pitching concepts for movies that are out in the theaters or that have been out in the theaters, pointing out all of the plot foibles. It's like, well, if he can bend the bars to get out of the cell, why doesn't he just bend the next set of bars to get out of the cell? Because then I'd have to have a chase sequence, and we can't afford that. Okay.
Exactly. We don't have time for that. Keep him in the cell. So the doctor sneaks back into the control room and warns them if they break through the crust, they'll release the angry green goo all over the earth. And that happens. Stallman attacks.
Ooh, that's a great band name, Angry Green Goo.
Angry Green Goo. It's a little hard to say, but it should be because it's a punk band. So, so the Sutton and the doctor are at this point trying to cap the drill head, but Stallman, who's again turning into a Primord, attacks them, and then they end up piercing the crust of the world.
They achieve penetration 0, which is a dramatic name that sounds really stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
a little off. And they now the world is going to end because they've released not just I guess it's not just the green goo that's the problem is, but they've released all of the magma or something, the interior of the earth.
The pressures that are built up underneath. They basically created a new volcano is what they did.
Yeah.
But it's a volcano that's like on steroids, and it's going to kill everyone in the world.
Yes.
It's Yellowstone times 3, apparently. I don't know.
Yes. Well, Father Greer, you have the best chance of not knowing about it when it happens. Going before it happens.
Well, that's for those who don't know, Yellowstone is a super volcano. Yellowstone National Park here in the United States is a super volcano, and the theory is that when it goes off, we'll have another one of those, nuclear winters, but it's supposed to be even bigger, and half of the United States will be wiped out, or at least will be decimated by the ash clouds and everything.
Yeah. If you want to see a really stupid movie version of that, watch 2012.
Yeah.
So yes.
Interestingly, I found it interesting here that that the Doctor is helping the baddies, for the common good. He is trying to save the Inferno Earth, and even if that means helping the baddies, and he just kind of falls into it naturally. And if you don't think about it, it's like you can kind of miss it. But I like the fact that he has no problem helping these people, even though they're evil versions of his regular friends.
Right, because the greater good, yes. And then when that is lost, when there's no way to save them, he decides, okay, you have to help me get back to my world to save them.
Yeah,
because we have to. If we can't save your world, at least there's still time to save my world. But the evil Liz and who's not so evil anymore, and Petra and Sutton are on board with that.
Yeah, they're all
Brig,
not so evil anymore.
Yeah, well, the evil Brig is still pretty evil.
Well, I knew you were going to him. He's still pretty evil.
He's still pretty evil. And he's like, no, if you have to take us with you. And the Doctor says, you can't. Like, if I bring you back, that creates some sort of
cosmic catastrophe is what he says. Yeah. And I'm like, why? You just came over to this universe. Why did that not create a cosmic catastrophe? You owe us, if you can bring people between universes, if you can bring one people with a car and this big hunk of machinery over into a universe, why does adding 3 more people, that's less than 600 pounds since 2 of them are women, why does an extra 600 pounds of atoms cause a cosmic catastrophe? I need at least a line to explain that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, they could, again, going into headcanon, it could be like, it's the idea of if you need an earlier version of yourself, it causes all kinds of badness. Well, maybe it's the same kind of thing, that if you meet a parallel universe version of yourself, it causes all kinds of badness.
Sure. I mean, I'll take all of those. In fact, I think all of those have been used at other times in Doctor Who to explain it.
This time it's
but
just,
they didn't
you can't do it. Period.
Yeah. So now, and Stallman and the others who've been infected are all now Wolfmen, who are trying to...
With green faces.
With green faces. Now, back in the Prime world...
And they're vulnerable to fire extinguishers for some reason.
Yes.
The cold.
Yes. Those fire extinguishers on that base are really cold.
Are fire extinguishers actually? I guess they kind of
they are CO2 extinguishers. They would be cold.
Yeah, they do get cold.
As you use them.
Yeah,
It's not like the modern where it's more the chemical.
I learned this in high school chemistry. As gas expands, it lowers in temperature.
Right,
just like the compressed air canister, when you spray it, it gets cold. Yep. So I think that's what it is. Gas. I forget. There's some kind of Bohr's law, something like that. Some chemistry guy will send us some feedback, please, on that one, so I don't have to look it up. So Sir Keith, back in our world, Sir Keith, who went to London to go over Stallman's head and get the ministers, whichever government minister is in charge of drilling to the center of the earth, his approval to shut it down. His idiot driver, who was obeying Stallman's order to keep Sir Keith driving around the countryside, disobeys not quite so green Stallman's orders, and then crashes anyway by not paying attention to the road. Like, oh, you're right, Sir Keith. I'm so wrong. Please don't punish me for having, betrayed you in favor of Sir Keith. Look at the road, you idiot!
Yeah.
And he crashes into something.
Speaking of green hands, I suspect some green must have changed hands here, because why would Sir Keith's chauffeur take orders from Stallman?
I mean, exactly.
It's like, I want you to keep driving him around forever. It's like, do you know what's going to happen when he catches me doing that?
Yeah.
I'm going to be fired. Why would I do that? Well, I mean,
exactly.
Can you make it worth my while?
Yeah, I was going to say, because you think the driver would basically say, yeah, you might think you run this project, but I don't work for you, so I don't care what you think.
Yeah.
Exactly. I work for Sir Keith.
Go play with your drill head, and I'll do my job.
Right. So, meanwhile, back in the Inferno universe, the attempt to fix the nuclear reactor switch room, the Petra has to rewire that.
I should explain. Speaking of green hands, so that's where Sir Keith was infected. He got some green goo on his hand, and he's been wearing white cotton gloves to keep it hidden.
I mean, Stallman was infected.
Stallman,
yeah. So Petra is having to rewire the nuclear reactor switch room so that they can power the Doctor's TARDIS and get him out of there. That's the here, and hold off the Wolfmen who are attacking them. And the first attempt to fix this fails, and brave Sir Robin, I mean, the evil Brig runs away. And so they finally get it fixed, and they're all standing in the workshop, and the evil Brig confronts the Doctor, and it says, "I'll shoot you if you don't take us." And it was Liz, section leader Liz, who shoots him in order to, as we said before, in order to stop him and let the Doctor go. And they had this horrific end. The lava is flowing into the shop as the Doctor disappears here.
I know these characters who stayed behind just got burned alive by lava.
Yeah.
Yes.
And one thing I love is as they're in the control room where Petra's trying to wire everything, the brigade leader's starting to freak out, and Liz just starts getting sarcastic to him, just starts mocking him. That's all right, brigade leader. Everything will be fine. Just keep bullying people around, just starts mocking him. It was great.
That was pretty good. So, of course, once the Doctor gets back, it's not, I'm back and we have to stop everything because, I just saw this dangerous thing. Nope, he's in a coma, of course.
Yeah. But he can talk in his coma.
Yes, because it's a Time Lord coma, and he conveys the solution to the crisis while talking in his coma. And so it was an infinity of universes.
So free will is not an illusion after all. The pattern can be changed.
Yes.
And I kind of wondered if this moment, even if they didn't realize it, is sort of the moment where the Doctor realizes time can be rewritten.
Mm-hmm.
Because up to this point in the series, the focus has always been on we can't change history.
Yep.
And later that shifts. And I kind of wonder if this moment resonates with that in some way.
Could be.
Interesting. That's an interesting. This could be a shift in the way that they view the Doctor, how the Doctor interacts with the world, the universe around him.
And then he gets up and starts irrationally smashing at a computer console with a spanner.
Yeah.
Yeah, he goes nuts on the console. I thought it was awesome. And then, Sir Keith
and
says,
the rubber band snaps, and Professor Stallman becomes a werewolf suddenly.
Well, this is actually really fun because Sir Keith just got done saying, okay, we can't stop things because there's no proof of an emergency situation. And then suddenly the Stallman the Beast comes out as a wolf man. Like, I think that's proof of an emergency situation.
Exactly.
We should probably stop.
He's also
things.
kind of like not really in charge of this project anymore now that he's a wolf man.
Yes, I think that's pretty clear. And of course, they shut it down with seconds to go because that's how things work.
But they have 35 seconds to go.
Yeah.
Which is nice. It didn't get down into the single digits.
Yes, it's not a Star Trek countdown. It is a Doctor Who one. And then there's this very strange, this strange conflict between the Doctor and Lethbridge Stewart, where he insults the Brigadier and then takes off with a TARDIS console in a snit, and then ends up in a dumpster or
a rubbish tip, which is what we would call a landfill.
Yes, about like a couple hundred yards away,
a dump
outside of his workshop. Yeah, a dump, and it was this very strange, like out of nowhere conflict, which was very.
I know
weird.
it's so that they can then have the comedic reconciliation between the two of them, and end the episode with Carolyn Johns laughing for the camera as her final appearance as Liz Shaw on the show.
Right, that's true. He did call him a pompous, self-opinionated idiot, which is there another way of being opinionated? But self-opinionated seems to be the way.
There could be other opinionated, I guess, like just slavishly devoted to someone else's opinions.
Wow, that would be really obnoxious. I'd rather self-opinionated.
Yeah, look at what it did for the Manson family.
Yeah,
exactly. All right, and that's where we end up. Like as you said, we end up with Liz, her last appearance. And I have to say, I'm sad to see Liz go. As companions go, I liked her. I thought she was a good companion. She stood up for herself. She was very.
She was more
capable.
of an equal than some companions.
Yes, and so I enjoyed that. So before I wanted to kind of mention where the third Doctor goes after this. But anything we want to say about this story before we do that?
Father, you first.
Just a small thing. When Sutton first comes in and sees the drill head and everything, he talks about how they're going to wake up Old Nick. Well, Old Nick is a kind of a Britishism for Satan.
Yes.
Right. Yep.
Right. Satan at the center of the world, which he's at the center of one world, but not this one, as we'll find out later with the 10th Doctor. Interesting.
And then there's kind of another funny line where after Sir Keith vanished. They didn't know where Sir Keith went in our universe, in the real world. The Brigadier says, people don't just vanish. Well, except the Doctor, who previously just vanished.
You've been around the Doctor a little too long to be saying that.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a few. I liked so after they achieve penetration 0 on the Inferno Earth, it becomes incredibly hot outside, and they have this visual effect they use whenever they're outdoors. That is, they've like changed the color balance, so it's brighter and it's redder, kind of orangey, and it's sort of pixelated to symbolize the heat. It's not fully pixelated, but they've done something to the resolution, so it's not exactly blurrier, but you can. It doesn't look normal. And I think it effectively conveys the impression of really oppressive heat.
Yeah.
I also like they have, once the Primoids really go full werewolf, you have a lot of shots where the Primoids are moving around and the actor playing a Primoid, and sometimes there will be several on screen at once, but one of them will like get a close up and leer menacingly at all the little children in the audience hiding behind the sofa, and that happens several times. I like that. I liked the when we have the final disaster on the Inferno Earth, there are these huge explosions of like actual real volcano stock footage, and lava flowing and people running and screaming in the soundtrack. And although it's a little muffled, but I thought it was a very effective end of the world kind of montage. I also kind of had to laugh at one point because as they're trying to do stuff like repair the nuclear console, they shake the camera and say, "Ooh, earthquakes. It's getting nearer." An earthquake is getting nearer? How would you possibly know that, even if it were true? Not stronger, but nearer.
Right. Yeah, and it was. I lost my point. All right, I'll just moving on from that. So the where does the series go from here? So with the third Doctor in season 8, we have some interesting additions that are coming up, and I just wanted to mention
Joe Grant.
Yes, we have new companions, Joe Grant. We also have in our next episode, which the next third Doctor one we talk about will be Terror of the Autons, which is the second appearance of the Autons and the Nestine consciousness, and the last time we'll see them until the first episode of New Who, which is
and we get the
Rose,
Master, and
the first appearance of the Master, which is going to be very interesting for me to see that. I'm looking forward to that.
And he's the main villain in every episode of next season. We get to see a lot of different sides of Roger Delgado's Master.
So that's I'm looking forward to that. It'll be very interesting. So before we go finish off, I do have a little bit of feedback from a listener on our episode 129, Voyage of the Damned, which was the Christmas episode featuring the spaceship Titanic.
Yeah, that was the Towering Inferno and the Poseidon Adventure.
Yeah.
Yes. So Emma Croik writes on Facebook, I think I remember Missy saying something about blowing up Belgium too in Death in Heaven, where she was blowing up the presidential airplane. She said something like, blow up this plane and, oh, what do I care? Belgium. Yeah, let's kill some Belgians. So for some reason, they apparently don't like Belgians.
I think that's kind of a long-running joke, because even going back to like Monty Python era TV, in Britain, there has always been Belgian jokes.
Yeah, it must be like Newfie jokes for Canadians. So our Canadian listeners will understand that. And she also said that reminded me of Time Crash, where Belgium is also mentioned in that. So so we have these
2 minutes to Belgium.
That's right. So thank you very much, Emma. That was a good reference to bring back to our recall. So before we finish up, we'd like to take a moment, as we do, to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Doctor Who, including this week, Kim L., Laura M., Matthew B., Sailing L, and Amy Z. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who in all the shows we do at StarQuest. We are so very grateful. And if you have the opportunity, if you have the ability to help us continue, you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of this third Doctor story called Inferno? let us know by visiting sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page and leave us some feedback there, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing a somewhat related story featuring the 10th Doctor and the 12th Doctor, not yet, called The Fires of Pompeii. We have more explosions from under the earth. Until then, Father Corey Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Doctor Who.
Well, thank you, Dom, and glad to be here.
Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thanks, Tom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, what did you expect? Some kind of space rocket with Batman at the controls?
Right. This is going to be fun.